Part 32. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Kisiung Jeong. Chapter 311. The bedroom at midnight was quiet and warm. With even breathing, a pair of siblings slept in each other's arms. As if adding a touch of tenderness to this quiet night. Suddenly, the buzzing vibration of the mobile phone appeared. Before it continued to ring, it was grabbed by a hand. Lin Xian opened his eyes. The confusion in his eyes turned into calmness in the next moment. He glanced at the incoming call and rolled his eyes. He found that human joys and sorrows were not connected, and he just felt that the mobile phone was too noisy. "Excuse me, can I regret being a policeman?" Lin Xian wanted to curse after answering the phone and putting it to his ear. "No, you are a policeman." Lu Yan's teasing voice came to his ears, "Get up and work." "Yes, I am a policeman, it hurts my heart." Lin Xian wanted to cry but had no tears. "Stack the thickest armor and take the most poisonous beating, isn't this a policeman?" "What case?" Lin Xian was weak. "Do you still need to ask?" Lu Yan smiled and said, "Ordinary cases are not our special criminal case task force. It is definitely beyond the local authorities' ability to handle them." Lin Xian was speechless. "We are all at your door." Lu Yan sighed, "Hurry up." Lin Xian's expression changed and he did not hesitate. It can be seen that the case is very urgent. After ending the call, he looked into his arms. He saw a pair of charming and seductive peach blossom eyes, looking at him without blinking. "Be good and sleep at home." Kissing her little mouth, Lin Xian smiled and said, "If you dare to be naughty, be careful that I will beat you when I come back." Humph. Mu Qingtian hummed softly, twisting her little body in his arms, and said softly, "Are you willing to give up?" "No." Patting her butt cheeks, Lin Xian kissed again, "Let's go." Mu Qingtian pouted, but still let go of her brother. The charming eyes flowed like autumn water, making people's hearts ripple. Both aggrieved and tempting, making it irresistible. Lin Xian wanted to get up, but stopped. He pressed her hard on the bed and kissed her. A little. He suddenly got up, got off the bed, and walked out of the bedroom. Mu Qingtian on the bed, smiling infatuatedly. Curling up her perfect body, like a seductive fairy. Her eyes revealed a charming and deep light. Reluctant, helpless, and sweet, finally hugged the quilt. Closed her eyes. Master bedroom. Lin Xian quietly walked to the bed and bent down. Mu Qingjian opened her eyes and slowly closed them. The two lips kissed together. For a long time. Lin Xian got up and walked to the door. Mu Qingjian sighed silently, looking at her brother's back. But reluctance and pride emerged in her eyes. Women have never been shackles to bind men. But eagle's nest. When the eagle soaring in the blue sky gets tired, it will naturally fly back. Lying in her arms. Outside the courtyard. Lin Xian walked into a business car. Lu Yan, Wang Meng, and others were there. No one spoke. Lu Yan took out a tablet and handed it to Lin Xian. "Wake up, unlock, enter the desktop, and click on the folder. There is an investigation report, or a file." Lin Xian opened the file and was slightly stunned. On the first page of the document, a photo suddenly appeared. When he saw the photo for the first time, his pupils contracted uncontrollably. Corpses, countless corpses. And they are all mummies. All these mummies are hidden behind a wall that has been chiseled open. Like playing with building blocks, in a space similar to a secret room. They are neatly stacked, one on top of another. From the appearance, those corpses are men and women, old and young, shocking. No, it should be said to be terrifying and creepy. Through the photos, one can feel a bone-chilling cold. How many bodies? Lin Xian's throat was a little dry. He didn't need to ask, because there would be a record at the back of the file. But he didn't dare to think about the number 77. Lu Yan's tone was so solemn. The air seemed to freeze at this moment. The heavy silence floated in the business car with endless pressure. Everyone in the task force seemed to have forgotten to breathe. 77 bodies, representing 77 lives? This horrific thing happened so suddenly. After a while, Lin Xian, who came back to his senses, slid his fingers and watched the investigation report. Criminal investigation file. Case name, Major Dry Corpse Case. Case number, 7845217889. Suspect name, none. Filing time, September 18, 2016. Filing unit, G Province F City Public Security Bureau Serious Case Investigation Section. 18th, evening, 7 o'clock. F City 110 received a call for help. The caller claimed to be a decorator who was demolishing a wall at an old crematorium. When he broke through a wall, he saw countless horrible mummies. Seeing those corpses, the decorator was so scared that he collapsed on the ground and almost died on the spot. When he came to his senses, he called the police. The police quickly rushed to the scene of the crime. Everyone was terrified. Countless mummies, densely packed mummies. It was confirmed that there were 77 mummies in total. The forensic doctor arrived and performed an on-site autopsy. It was confirmed that the estimated time of death of these mummies was about 10–15 years. After searching and investigating, no clues could be confirmed at the scene. Later, all the staff of the crematorium at that time were controlled. After investigation and interrogation by the police, it was confirmed that the original staff of the crematorium had no suspicion of committing the crime. Because the case was too big, the municipal bureau reported it to the provincial department, and the provincial department reported it to the Ministry of Public Security. For such a case, the local municipal bureau and provincial department were not qualified to investigate it at all. It was too big. That was 77 mummies, which might involve 77 lives. Not to mention the local municipal bureau, even the local provincial department was almost scared crazy. Let's not talk about the final result of the case. Let's just say that such a case occurred. The entire public security system of G Province is probably finished, waiting to be dealt with later. Even the provincial and municipal leaders may also be taken down in large numbers. When the Ministry of Public Security learned the news, it directly mobilized police forces from other provinces to enter. It has controlled all major departments of the local municipal bureau and taken over in full. It's so terrifying. Then, the superior mobilized the Special Task Force for Serious Criminal Cases to investigate. There was only one sentence on it. No matter who was involved in this case, they would be investigated thoroughly. As long as there was any external interference, kill first and report later. The phrase kill first and report later is not difficult to understand, right? To put it bluntly, anyone who dares to make a small move, the Special Task Force for Serious Criminal Cases can catch them on the spot. Don't talk about sections, departments, bureaus, and ministries. No one can do anything, and everyone will die. Because, that could be 77 lives? To put it more exaggeratedly, the entire Longguo public security system exploded. There are also 2 deputy chief police inspectors on their way to the airport. They will go to F City, G Province with the Special Task Force for Serious Criminal Cases in a while. It is conceivable how angry the superiors are. Lin Xian put down the tablet, his head was buzzing. This is the real start of hell mode. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Kisiun Zhong. Chapter 312. F City, G Province. F City is abbreviated as Chan, so it can be called Chan City. Legend has it that in the 2nd year of Zhengguan, the ancients excavated 3 Buddha statues in the city. It is believed to be a Buddhist place. Airport. A small passenger plane landed slowly. 5 policemen in white shirts got off the plane first. They were followed by members of the Special Criminal Case Task Force. Outside the airport runway, a fleet of police cars was parked. Everyone got on the car directly and went to the F-City Bureau. About 20 minutes. Conference room of the F-City Bureau. It has become the case command center at this time. Countless policemen sat on chairs with solemn expressions. When Lin Xian followed a group of white shirts into the conference room, instantly, all the police stood up. Those white shirts didn't even look at them. A deputy chief police inspector turned around and looked at Lin Xian. "Do your thing." "Yes." Lin Xian stood at attention, saluted, turned around and left. He led the team members to the crime scene as soon as possible. F-City, the former site of a crematorium. When everyone arrived, they looked at the blocked area. They couldn't help but frown. It was too dilapidated. The outer wall exuded a sense of vicissitudes of time, and the mottled walls were covered with moss and vines. The rusty pipes and machines next to the dilapidated incinerator exuded a heavy metallic smell. It was like looking at an old and decayed old man. Lin Xian looked around. The entire area was under martial law and taken over by countless armed police. Dozens of police were investigating the scene area, looking for any suspicious traces. Lin Xian waved his hand, and the team members dispersed. He and Lu Changjiang went to the underground cold storage of the crematorium. Or in other words, it was a dilapidated funeral home. Funeral homes in the past did not have refrigeration equipment. After the bodies were transported, most of them were kept in the underground morgue. It can slow down the decay of the bodies. Go underground. You can see the rooms one by one, and you can also see the hall of the funeral home. The dim light cast mottled shadows on the wall. It seemed that the shadows of those who had passed away were wandering. There was an indescribable smell in the air. It was pungent like disinfectant, and there was an indescribable coldness. It seemed that there was a stronger and more gloomy breath blowing in the face. It made people's hair stand on end involuntarily. Lin Xian and Lu Changjiang walked into a corridor at the back and past the morgue. Finally, they came to a warehouse. There were several forensic doctors inside and outside the warehouse. Someone brought a dissection table, on which was placed a dried corpse. Without being told, Lu Changjiang walked over and checked the dried corpse. Lin Xian walked into the warehouse. But he suddenly stopped and held his breath. Although he had seen the horrible scene in the photo a long time ago, when he put himself in the shoes and watched it in reality, it still made his hair stand on end. A broken wall. A dark and hazy secret room. Countless corpses were neatly stacked inside. The air seemed to be filled with a suffocating horror. The scenery inside the secret room seemed to become distorted and weird, as if eroded by some evil force. People dared not look directly at it, for fear of being swallowed by it. Lin Xian stared at the mummies, and then looked at more mummies from one to another. There were children's skeletons that were 1 meter long, and old people's skeletons with atrophied skeletons. There were also adult corpses. All of them were shriveled, as if they were drained of water by some inexplicable unknown force. Even Lin Xian, who had killed countless people, began to feel uncomfortable in his stomach when facing such a scene. He moved his feet again and walked towards the destroyed wall step by step. He squatted down slowly again and looked at the mummies from a close distance. Suddenly, his eyes slowly narrowed, and his eyes swept over the mummies. No. Lin Xian took a deep breath. The appearance of the mummies, as if the traces of life have been drained away by the years, is extremely withered and terrifying. Their skin is tightly attached to the bones, showing a strange dark yellow color. The facial features are blurred, leaving only deep eye sockets and shriveled lips, revealing a dead silence. However, their bones are clearly visible, and even the outline of the joints can be seen through the thin skin. What's wrong? Aren't all mummies like this? Yes, they are all like this. But all the mummies in front of me have the same death state after death. That feeling. It seems that someone has deliberately processed these corpses. Just like making air-dried bacon, cured chicken, cured pig. Each corpse is processed in the same way. The most terrifying thing is, the joints of the mummy's limbs also appear abnormally stiff, maintaining the final death posture. Straight posture. Many people have eaten pressed duck. The mummies in front of me are just like those pressed ducks. Flat and straight. Lying there straight in a weird posture. No, they were placed there one by one. It was like piling up blocks, corpse blocks. Suddenly, a footstep sounded behind Lin Xian. Head. Lu Changjiang's voice was solemn. Lin Xian stood up slowly. Speak. Those bodies were all handled by humans. Lu Changjiang took a deep breath. I just saw a corpse. It should have been dehydrated and air-dried after death. I also found traces of anesthetic residues in the corpse, as well as some strange drugs, chemicals, and other residues. Lin Xian's expression froze. Anesthetic. Drug. Chemical. In an instant, he thought of many possibilities. What else did you find? Lin Xian looked directly into Lu Changjiang's eyes. I also found multiple traces of intravenous injections and surgical operations on the corpse. Lu Changjiang hesitated for a moment. The most complete autopsy is needed to finally determine the cause of death. Lin Xian did not continue to ask anything, but frowned. The first task now is to determine the identity and cause of death of these mummies. But there is one thing that is really strange. If they were all murdered, then why not cremate? Guarding the crematorium, cremation is not very simple. Why hide the body? Lin Xian shook his head. Cremation is also prone to accidents. As for why hide the body in the crematorium? After thinking about it, there are too many questions, and there are many unreasonable things. As for what the truth is, we must check it out. Let's do an autopsy. Lin Xian walked out of the warehouse and walked out. In a blink of an eye, a day passed. The autopsy results came out. This is a comprehensive autopsy of 5 mummies at the same time. The final result. Homicide is also murder. The cause of death, drugs and chemicals caused death. Of course, this is not the most terrible. The terrible thing is that Lu Changjiang found through the autopsy that many of the deceased had been injected with some strange drugs and chemicals before their death. And those drugs and chemicals have never been seen in the world. Thus, a creepy conclusion was drawn. Suspected, human experiment. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Kisiun. Chapter 313. Human Experiment. Lin Xian's face was instantly cold and angry. Like the frost of winter covering the steep mountains, cold and hard. Hearing the words human experiment, he recalled a memory and thought of a place. I-City, the site of the 731 Crime Evidence Exhibition Hall. Many people may have been there and seen it. But most people have seen the new site. Few people have been to the old site. I remember that he was very young that year. I went there once with my parents. When he saw the baby soaked in formalin, he exclaimed. The result. Dad slapped him and told him to shut up. He saw countless names, densely packed. The names of the subjects. He also saw the experimental projects one by one. Experiments on people in vacuum, experiments on people under air pressure, freezing, burning, air drying, X-rays, drugs, poisons, viruses, chemistry. In order to explore the limits of the human body, some bastards conducted various inhumane and inhumane experiments on the dragon people. There are at least 5,000 people recorded. There are no records, and conservatively estimated that it may be more than 3 times as many. My father's eyes were red at the time, and he looked at him with a ferocious expression. Watch carefully, remember carefully, and when you have the chance, go and kill them. Lin Xian still remembers when he walked out with his parents. It was dark. But looking from a distance, he saw a bright red. It was a blood-red national flag. When Lin Xian came back to his senses, a line of words still echoed in his mind. Go forward, don't look back, there is light ahead. Human experiment. Lin Xian turned around and looked at Lu Changjiang quietly. In an instant, Lu Changjiang felt a terrifying chill sweeping over him. It was like falling into an ice cave, his body was frozen, and even his brain was numb from the cold. Lin Xian. Guo Su on the side suddenly yelled. Lin Xian blinked his eyes, and his eyes became clear again. The terrible breath disappeared without a trace. Sorry, Lin Xian smiled. Lu Changjiang, who broke out in a cold sweat, shuddered and shook his head. It's okay. How did you confirm it? Lin Xian looked at the crematorium not far away, his tone cold. The traces of human experiments are too obvious, and all 5 mummies are like this. Lu Changjiang quickly reported, through the extraction of drug residues in corpse tissue, we found that those drugs and chemicals should be something similar to stimulating human potential, stimulating too many hormones secreted by the human body, such as adrenaline. Many people know that when humans encounter excitement, fear, tension, etc., adrenaline will be secreted in large quantities. But few people know that adrenaline is a necessary factor to stimulate human potential. For example, when humans face challenges or threats, the brain will produce a series of biochemical reactions, and the sympathetic nervous system will secrete a large amount of adrenaline. It can allow a human to use physical strength beyond the usual limit. Strength, speed, endurance, coordination, flexibility, agility, will be fully enhanced. Lu Changjiang discovered through autopsy. The 5 mummies that were fully dissected all had traces of adrenaline stimulated multiple times. These adrenaline was actually fused with those unknown drugs and chemicals. Then, the body was in a state of excessive adrenaline. What are the consequences of excessive adrenaline for a long time? It can lead to osteoporosis, high blood pressure, heart disease, etc. It's simply suicide. Lin Xian's pupils shrank wildly. Human potential stimulated? He thought of a type of people. For example, soldiers. But not the scientifically trained soldiers now. But the soldiers trained by Zhuhua country in World War II. Through some terrible drugs, these soldiers were excited, bursting with physical strength, fearless of death, and reduced pain. Become super soldiers. According to records, most of those soldiers did not survive more than 2 years. Even if they could survive for 2 years, they would die within 5 years. To put it bluntly, that is a drug that squeezes vitality and potential. Is it this kind of thing? Lin Xian frowned and asked another question, why can't we use animals for experiments first, but human bodies? This sentence is also what other team members want to ask. Unexpectedly, Lu Changjiang's expression suddenly became strange, and he said something strange. It's possible that human bodies are cheaper. Everyone who heard this was dumbfounded, looking at Lu Changjiang, as if asking, what nonsense are you talking about? You don't understand experiments, so you don't know how expensive some experimental products are. Lu Changjiang sighed. You should have heard that sometimes some experiments will catch some monkeys, gorillas, and baboons for experiments, right? Everyone nodded. Then do you know how much a laboratory monkey costs? Lu Changjiang asked again. Everyone shook their heads. It starts at tens of thousands, and there is often no demand. Lu Changjiang continued, I remember that the year before last, the price of experimental monkeys was 100,000 each, and the number was rare, so it was not certain that they could be bought. I remember a case. Ji Yang then said, I solved a case of a zoo buying and selling animals. This zoo secretly sold monkeys to a laboratory for 50,000 each. Everyone's face changed. Understand what Lu Changjiang meant by human bodies are cheaper. They thought of human trafficking. That's right, in today's era, or in the past. Humans are really not expensive. In the hands of human traffickers, they can be bought for tens of thousands of yuan. Is that right? If compared with those monkeys that cost tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of yuan, are they much cheaper? Because of Lu Changjiang's words, everyone also had a reasoning. Is it possible for this case in front of us? Someone is doing experiments and can't get monkeys, maybe monkeys are too expensive. So a certain laboratory started to use living people for experiments. Could these people be bought from human traffickers? Those mummies have children, old people, and adults. They are very reluctant to think about this. But the autopsy results of the mummies force you to think about it. At this time, Park Wen-hui ran to report, I found the identity information of a mummified body. Checking identity information is sometimes not a difficult thing. People can't appear out of thin air, nor can they disappear out of thin air. Want to check a person's identity information? First, the detention center and prison, and then the missing persons. Those who have committed crimes should know this. As long as you enter here, your fingerprints and blood samples will be recorded. If it is a mummy, the fingerprints will still be preserved. Needless to say, the blood sample. The DNA of criminals is recorded. Compare it with the DNA of the mummy and it will come out. If you can't find it in the criminal database, then check the missing persons. If someone's family is missing, don't they report it? As long as there is a report, there must be a record. Just take a sample of the DNA of the mummy and compare it with those family members. If it is a missing person, will it also come out? What a coincidence. Park Wen-hui found the identity of a mummy through the criminal database. And through this identity, he retrieved the police case record and found that it was a missing person. But this result made Lin Xian and others frown. Is it really as they reasoned? Someone bought a live body from a human trafficker. Conduct human experiments. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Kisiung Zhong. Chapter 314. Another day passed. The identity information of each mummy was found. Almost all are missing persons. And he was a missing person more than 10 years ago. After checking this, the faces of everyone in the task force became extremely solemn. Because the time span of this case is too long. How to check for missing persons from more than 10 years ago? At that time, it was only around 200 years ago, and there was not even urban Skynet surveillance. Not to mention there are any clues or traces. Wang Meng, Li Long, and Zhao Deshan went to the local detention center to interrogate former crematorium employees. Even though I knew I couldn't find any clues, I still had to check it out myself. Ji Yang and Pu Wenhui continued to check the identity information of other mummies. Zhan Zhaoyang assisted everyone in retrieving online information. Lu Changjiang continued the autopsy to see if he could find any new clues. Lin Xian and Guo Su became the two most idle people. Needless to say, Guo Su has average investigative abilities. Before Lin Xian came to the task force, he was the gold medal fighter of the task force. He's good at fighting, but he's bad at catching people blind when investigating crimes. Their areas of expertise are different. You have a good brain, you have to think of a solution quickly. Guo Su handed Lin Xian a cigarette and said, "Your sister-in-law is going to give birth. I want to go home early." Huh, Lin Xian's eyes lit up. Second dick. Guo Su smiled proudly, the previous one was a daughter, and she's already in elementary school. I didn't expect your sister-in-law to be pregnant again. This time, she's going to have a baby. Damn it, Lin Xian was jealous of his real name and thought of his two sisters. Otherwise, if this case is over, when I go back. Shaked his head. If she really got pregnant before marriage, the Lu family and the Mu family couldn't afford to lose that person. Lin Xian is not a eunuch. He sleeps with two stunning beauties in his arms every day. Don't really want to do anything? As for getting the certificate first, who should I get the certificate from? Mu Qingtian said that she was willing to be a child. But as a man, can you really let her do it? Why, I just think about that thing in my crotch every day. Don't you even think about whether you can give someone a status? People can be selfish, but people are not animals. Since he chose them, Lin Xian has a lot of responsibility to shoulder. He wanted to give it a try and use his merits to achieve success. Also want to marry them together. The media is getting married. Hey, the little brother's face looks wrong. Hiss, Guo Su took a breath. A grown man has such a complicated expression. What is he thinking? How could Guo Su know? Hearing that he was about to have a second child, Lin Xian was extremely envious. I want to risk my life. As for the case at hand, Lin Xian's expression changed. There is a way. Guo Su's eyes suddenly brightened. What can I do? Human traffickers. Lin Xian said coldly, through the investigation of the identity information of the mummies, most of these deceased people are missing people. We have also deduced that it is very likely that a laboratory purchased them from human traffickers and conducted human experiments. Ye Guo Su nodded. Since this is the case, and there are no clues now, let's start with the traffickers. Lin Xian took a deep breath. Although the time span is long, it does not mean that there are no traces. Assume that these mummies are all sold by human traffickers. There are 77 people. Can ordinary traffickers do it? Definitely not. Guo Su shook his head. It must be a criminal organization or a group. They had solved a gang case in the past. I also know something about human traffickers. There are more than 70 people who can be trafficked in this way. It must be organized and premeditated, and the crime must be committed by a gang. Although it was more than 10 years ago. But there are traces to follow. Zhan Xiaoyang. Lin Xian shouted not far away. Zhan Xiaoyang came over with his laptop, checked the location of the deceased, see where they disappeared, and select the area where the disappearances are concentrated. When human traffickers abduct people, they mostly choose a place to operate. For example, a province or a city. After kidnapping some people, they sell them to another place. However, this involves a regional issue. Because the abducted people are alive, transporting them is very troublesome. They will select an area to facilitate the removal of the population. It should also be convenient to bring people into the area where buyers are located to avoid being caught by the police. 8 of the deceased were listed as missing persons in Province G that year. Zhan Xiaoyang checked for a while and gave the answer. Crime in the same province, Lin Xian and Guo Su frowned. Get people in Province G and sell them to City F? If that's the case. This group of traffickers is very courageous. The information of these 8 deceased persons belong to 7 cities in Province G that year. There are only 2 people who belong to the same city. This shows what? It shows that human traffickers are very bold in the city. He should be familiar with the city. Only then did he dare to commit crimes continuously in the city. And it is not easy for a person to understand a city. Many people have the experience of going to other provinces and cities to study and work. When you first arrived in a foreign province or city, did you feel like you were blind, and it took a long time for you to get familiar with it? Infer from this. Traffickers are familiar with committing crimes here. You must have lived in this city for a long time, right? Nangxiang, also known as Xiangzhou, is a fourth-tier city. It is also the famous hometown of yellow smoke, ginkgo, and dinosaurs in the Dragon Kingdom. A helicopter landed on the road. Lin Xian, Guo Su, and Zhan Xiaoyang stepped off the helicopter. Get in a police car and go straight to the city bureau. The task force was also divided into two groups to investigate on two fronts. Another group, led by Wang Meng, continued the investigation in F City. Nangxiang Public Security Bureau. Lin Xian shook hands with the secretary of the Municipal Law Committee. The other party is also the top leader of Nangxiang Public Security Bureau. Human trafficker. When the other party heard Lin Xian's intention, he was a little confused. There is no way not to be confused. People from the Ministry of Public Security are still in the Severe Special Criminal Case Task Force. Come check out the human traffickers, are you kidding me? Yes, Lin Xian nodded. He was not in the mood for a joke now. Moreover, the appearance of 77 mummies in City F was also classified. All provincial offices were sealed. Only a few people know it. The person in front of me is not qualified enough to know about that case. Subsequently, Lin Xian took out two pieces of information, also of the two deceased persons. Hand it to the other person. Both of these two people disappeared in your city and were suspected of being abducted. Lin Xian said quickly, although about 11 to 13 years have passed, your bureau should have files. Pull out the files when they disappeared. By the way, it's best to bring in the police officers who were responsible for handling the case at that time. Come here, I need to ask about these two cases in person. Regarding Lin Xian's request, the other party is immediately satisfied and does not dare to be dissatisfied. No fool can sit in a position like his. A big boss from Beijing came to one of their fourth-tier cities to investigate the case. Just thinking about it with your buttocks can make people sweat. Don't talk about human traffickers, it must be an extremely horrific case. About an hour. Two missing persons investigation reports, as well as the police officers responsible for investigating the two cases that year, all appeared in front of Lin Xian. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Xiong. Chapter 315. In a conference room. Lin Xian was looking at the four policemen in front of him. They were both responsible for investigating two missing persons cases that year. At this time, Lin Xian also had two investigation reports in front of him. There's nothing fancy about this thing. Basically, family members report the crime and the police look for someone. After searching for half a year and several months with no results, I put it on hold. I still remember this disappearance. A policeman smiled bitterly. At that time, our family members came to our office every day to make trouble, saying that we only ate, did not work, and did not try our best. Some of the curses were very dirty. After hearing what the police said, everyone smiled knowingly. But my heart felt a little cold. You don't really want the police to handle cases just for you every day, do you? Don't make trouble. The police serve everyone, not just you. Do you know how many cases occur every year, every month, every day? No need to deal with other cases. Just let the police work, but you can't see that the police are exhausted. Also insulting? Never vent your selfishness on others. You do not deserve. Later, the four police officers talked about the case that year. But I also recalled it while reading the investigation report. For more than 10 years, human memory cannot be that good. After listening to the four policemen talk about the two cases that year, Lin Xian frowned. Almost no clues were found. It was also because the criminal investigation methods back then were too backward. Unlike now, the streets are full of surveillance cameras. At that time, the police relied on experience and visits to investigate cases. However, one of the policemen gave a clue. He had an informant in his hands back then. A person who is idle in society is, to put it bluntly, a gangster. That little gangster was talking about something. It was said that there was a big brother who received several people the day after the disappearance case occurred. The big brother also helped these people find a car and told them what kind of piglets they wanted to give away. At that time, the policeman suspected that the traffickers had abducted the people and then found a car to take them out of the city. I also investigated the big brother. To no avail. Why is there no result? Because this big brother was very powerful in Nangxiang at that time. I can't check anymore. What was the state of the Dragon Kingdom 2000 years ago? Maybe everyone understands it. But now, this big brother has cleared his name and is doing business in Nangxiang. The power is still great. Ah! Lin Xian and the others all laughed. Zhan Xiaoyang laughed the loudest. What the hell, big brother, what the hell are all those things? Give me your name and information. Lin Xian said to the policeman. Soon. A piece of information appeared in front of Lin Xian. Hu Jiaoqiang, male, 42 years old, from Nangxiang, has 3 criminal records, the owner of a chain of nightclubs. Displayed through data. This Hu Kaosheng stopped playing on the road a few years ago. First I opened an internet cafe, and then I started a bar business. After the business was booming, 3 chain nightclubs were opened. Personal property is probably tens of millions, and she is unmarried. But I like to spend all day in my own nightclub. Because there was a mistress of Hu Jiaoqiang in a certain nightclub who was also helping him manage the nightclub business. Lin Xian raised his hand and glanced at the time. It was around 8 o'clock in the evening, and the nightclub was already open for business. Let's go find Hu Kaoxian to check. Lin Xian stood up and looked at the 4 policemen, smiling, keep it secret. The expressions of the 4 police officers changed, and they nodded with a wry smile. Night. 8:35. A nightclub. The music is deafening and the lights change to the beat. It was full of laughter and lively atmosphere. People sway their bodies to the music, release their inner passion and vitality, and look for happiness and excitement here. Lin Xian frowned as he walked into the nightclub, feeling a little uncomfortable. It's not just him. Guo Su and Zhan Xiaoyang were both frowning. Then the 3 of them walked directly to the 2nd floor. Came outside an open box. A group of men could be seen chatting and laughing with several women wearing heavy makeup. Many of those men have hairy heads, bald heads, tattoos, and dog leashes. Standard social boy dress. When these people saw Lin Xian and others, they were slightly stunned. Because the temperament and clothing of the 3 of them were obviously incompatible with the nightclub. Lin Xian's eyes fell on a middle-aged man. The other party looked like he was very rich. Dressed in luxury goods, he has the air of a rich man. Just the person he was looking for. Hu Jiaoqiang. Lin Xian walked straight over and stood in front of the other side. Hello, police, there is a case that I need your assistance in investigating. It's too noisy here. Let's go out and talk. There is no imaginary show-off plot. When Guo Su took out his gun and placed it beside his thigh, he smiled at the group of people in front of him. Everyone's expressions changed, and they bowed their heads honestly. Only Hu Jiaoqiang changed his expression, stared at Lin Xian for a long time, and stood up. Follow Lin Xian out of the nightclub and outside. Officer, I am a businessman and I am not breaking the law. Hu Jiaoqiang looked at Lin Xian with a smile on his face, and I can also talk to the deputy director of your bureau. Okay, shut up. Lin Xian interrupted him, who is the deputy director you are talking about? I will give you the opportunity to call him. Hu Jiaoqiang's expression changed drastically, and his eyes showed fear. Lin Xian's words were not ordinary arrogant. It was clear that he did not take the deputy director seriously. The fact was indeed so. Let alone the director, ask the mayor if he dares to show up. The higher UPS have already explained that anyone who dares to make small moves, take them all down, kill them first and report later, no matter who they are. Let alone the director, even if it is the mayor or the governor. If they dare to jump out. With Lin Xian's personality, he dares to do them anyway. A small deputy director. Who are you trying to scare? After hesitating for a long time, Hu Zhaoqiang smiled bitterly. Little brother, I have offended you. Are you worthy of offending me? Lin Xian's expression was calm and his tone was indifferent. This was not pretending, but the fact. Hu Zhaoqiang was stunned for a long time, then sighed. What do you want to ask? 11 years ago, you invited a few people to drink and eat, and helped them find a car and sent piglets. Lin Xian looked directly into his eyes. Is that true? More than 10 years ago? Hu Zhaoqiang was confused for a long time, trying to recall. Suddenly, his face changed slightly, as if he remembered something. Lin Xian stared at his eyes, analyzing his expression and listening to his heartbeat. There's a problem. Sorry, I can't remember clearly. Hu Zhaoqiang smiled calmly and shook his head. It's been too long. Take him away. Lin Xian turned around and walked towards the police car not far away. Guo Su's arm instantly rested on Hu Zhaoqiang's shoulder, whose face changed drastically, and grinned. Go by yourself, don't let me do it, understand? Hu Zhaoqiang's cold sweat instantly broke out on his forehead. Following Lin Xian obediently. Everyone got into the police car. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Kisiun Zhong. Chapter 316. Police car, backseat. Guo Su and Zhan Xiaoyang sat on Hu Zhaoqiang's left and right. At this time, Hu Zhaoqiang seemed to feel a chill running from his feet to his heart, making him unable to move. His face turned pale, his eyes were full of fear, and he looked at Lin Xian who was smoking in the passenger seat. I have given you a chance. Lin Xian exhaled smoke, his voice was cold. Why don't you cherish it? Hu Zhaoqiang. How should he respond to this? Some things will be irreversible after they are said. As long as they are normal people, they have a fluke mentality. Or admit it and die, and there is still a way to live if you don't admit it. What would you choose? Tell me who those people are the piglets being transported trafficked? Lin Xian turned his head and looked at him coldly. Hu Zhaoqiang remained silent and lowered his head. Zhan Xiaoyang took out his pistol, opened the safety, and pulled the bolt to confirm. Then he handed the pistol to Lin Xian who raised his hand. Hu Zhaoqiang suddenly raised his head. He looked at the policeman in front of him with an unbelievable face, dumbfounded. It's not like he had never dealt with the police before. Where have you seen people use guns directly during interrogation? Do you think we are a little unscrupulous? Lin Xian stretched out his arms and pointed the muzzle of the gun at Hu Zhaoqiang's thigh. We are indeed policemen, but we are different from the kind of policemen you imagine. By the way, I forgot to introduce myself. We are from Beijing, the Ministry of Public Security. Lin Xian looked at Hu Zhaoqiang, who was pale. Now I will count to 3, 3, 2. Hu Zhaoqiang widened his eyes, his pupils revealed unspeakable fear, his heartbeat was like thunder, and he suddenly said, I say. Bang. A bullet pierced his thigh. Ah! Hu Zhaoqiang screamed. Sorry. Lin Xian looked at him with a smile. It went off. But the pistol was pointed at Hu Zhaoqiang's chest. It was pressed there without moving. Hu Zhaoqiang covered his mouth in horror. his eyes filled with endless fear. He managed to hold back his screams. "That's good." Lin Xian still kept smiling. "Go ahead. They are human traffickers, and the piglets are indeed kidnapped by them." Hu Zhaoqiang put down his hands and said quickly and painfully. "How did you get to know those human traffickers?" Lin Xian continued to ask. "When I was in the underworld, I would come into contact with people from all walks of life." Hu Zhaoqiang's voice trembled because of the pain in his thigh. "I came into contact with another underworld person." "Who is that person?" Lin Xian narrowed his eyes. "De Long, his name is Qian Long." Hu Zhaoqiang answered quickly. "He retired a long time ago and opened a force store as an agent." Lin Xian frowned and looked at his subordinates. Zhan Xiaoyang took out his laptop and typed on the keyboard with his fingers flying. In a few seconds, a personal profile appeared on the computer monitor. Qian Long, 39 years old, from Nangxiang, the owner of a force shop, has a criminal record. "Is it him?" Zhan Xiaoyang asked Hu Zhaoqiang to identify the photo on the monitor. "Yes." Hu Zhaoqiang nodded quickly. "It's him." Zhan Xiaoyang nodded to Lin Xian. Half an hour later. Nangxiang, a KTV. A large private room. A group of middle-aged men in suits and leather shoes were toasting, with young ladies sitting around them. Suddenly, the door of the private room was pushed open. Lin Xian walked in. Looked around and looked at a middle-aged man. "You." Lin Xian pointed at the other party. "Police, come with me." The other party was Qian Long. When he heard the word police, the other party's face changed. But he was still very obedient and stood up. When he came to Lin Xian's side, he was about to walk out of the private room. Suddenly, he ran away. "Ha ha," Lin Xian laughed. Looking at the other parties running back. I also saw Guo Su happily reaching out his hand in the corridor ahead and grabbing the other person's neck. He kneed the other person in the abdomen. Then, he walked over with Qian Long, who was limp as mud. "Are you an idiot?" Lin Xian looked at Qian Long, who was pale, in pain and fear. Outside the KTV building, countless SWAT officers on standby watched Lin Xian walk out. I also saw the person Guo Su was carrying. "Collect the team." When passing by the SWAT captain, Lin Xian nodded. "Yes." The other party raised his hand to salute, and everyone got in the car. "Go straight to the Municipal Public Security Bureau." Nangxiang Municipal Bureau, interrogation room. 2 interrogation chairs, Hu Zhaoqiang and Qian Long were handcuffed on them, like 2 lambs to be slaughtered. "You only have one way to survive now, and I don't want to torture you." Lin Xian's eyes swept over the 2 people in front of him. "Tell me who those human traffickers are and how to find them." Hu Zhaoqiang and Qian Long looked at each other. Isn't Lin Xian afraid of collusion? Don't be funny. What's the point of colluding with others? If they dare to lie, Lin Xian can really break their legs. Let them wish they were dead or alive. The bosses above were furious and told the special criminal case team that they could execute first and report later. Do you know what this means? It means that the bosses above only want answers, and you can use whatever means you want. Even if something goes wrong, there are bosses above you to take responsibility for it. Of course, if you are given this authority, you have to take down the case. If you can't take it down, the bosses above will not be lenient to you. Rewards and punishments are clear. However, the 2 suspects in front of them were very happy and confessed everything directly. Because they knew that Lin Xian was not kidding them. If they confessed, they might still have a chance to live, but if they didn't confess, they would definitely die. When they just came to the municipal bureau, they saw with their own eyes that the top brother of the municipal bureau had to follow Lin Xian, and they didn't even have the qualifications to walk side by side. You can imagine how terrifying this policeman from the Beijing Public Security Department is. The nickname of that man is Lao Ba, his surname is Zhou, he is a local, he used to be a gangster, and later he got together with some kidnappers and started human trafficking. Qian Long confessed in a low voice. Lin Xian frowned. The word kidnapper is not a current word, but an old word, a slang. In the old days, kidnapper was one of the 5 categories in the lower 5. There are many types of kidnapping, such as adultery, child kidnapping, forced kidnapping, seduction, civil kidnapping, and martial kidnapping. For example, martial kidnapping is commonly known as beating with a club or begging. The methods used by human traffickers are so diverse that it is dazzling. When Lin Xian heard the word kidnapper, he knew that this was a large gang, or an organization, or a group. Otherwise, he would not even know what kidnapper is, let alone call it out. Soon, the information of this nickname Lao Ba was retrieved. Zhou Yangjia, 42 years old, from Nangxiang, has no criminal record. Then, the suspect's bank statements, online banking records, ID card usage, etc. were all retrieved. The target is locked, City F. Lin Xian was surprised. What a coincidence. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Kisiung Zhou. Chapter 317. The street lights were dim and silent at midnight. City F, outside a certain community. The suspect Zhou Yangjia lives here. Wang Meng looked at Lin Xian, who got out of the car and reported the investigation results. Lin Xian pointed to the community. Other team members rushed in and began to make arrests. How's your investigation going? Lin Xian leaned on the car and rubbed his eyebrows. Lu Changjiang has determined the approximate time when the corpses were hidden by dissecting dozens of mummies. Wang Meng's face was gloomy. Most of those mummies were hidden in the secret room in the same year. Lin Xian's expression changed. That means 77 people were killed in the same year? Then they were made into mummies and hidden in secret rooms. Through the interrogation of the crematorium employees, it was found that only 2 people had access to the secret room more than 10 years ago. Wang Meng sighed, one of them passed away, and the other is now hemiplegic and suffered a stroke for many years. All the clues have been cleared. Lin Xian was very calm. There should be basically no fools who can handle this kind of case. The strange thing is that the other party did some very stupid things. Like, why are bodies buried in crematoriums? Why mummify the body? Why aren't they afraid of the body being exposed? Is it possible that there are some problems with this process? Lin Xian thought for a while. Originally, someone wanted to send the body to the crematorium to destroy the traces of the body. But in the process, the body was intercepted and made into a mummy and hidden. Wang Meng's eyes flashed with cold light. It is indeed possible. I still remember that they once solved a case. It involved a funeral home and employees reselling corpses. People who don't understand think that a body is useless after a person dies. But knowledgeable people know that even if a person dies, the body can still be sold for a lot of money. The reason why mummies were made was probably to facilitate storage. It is very likely that these mummies were accumulated with the intention of selling them together. If this is the reasoning, it is tenable. Otherwise, they can't figure out why someone would be so stupid to hide the body and wait for it to be exposed. If this reasoning holds true, it shows that there is still something wrong with the people at the crematorium. Did the employees of this crematorium originally negotiate with certain people to help them mutilate their corpses, but because of their greed for money, they left these corpses behind? But before the sale was made, some problems were encountered and it was too late to sell, so more than 10 years passed before the body was exposed. Check to see if there was any accident in this crematorium 10 years ago. Lin Xian ordered in a cold voice, by the way, start looking for clues from the hemiplegic employee. Good. Wang Meng left. Guo Su and others also brought someone out from the community. The suspect, Zhou Yongzhe. Lin Xian looked at each other. At first glance, this is an ordinary and simple middle-aged man. Short and chubby, he looks like an ordinary greasy uncle. But on his face, he pretended to be confused and scared. The pupils of both eyes contracted a few times from time to time, but the eyeballs moved flexibly. Thinking about how to escape, Lin Xian asked with a smile. What are you talking about? Zhou Yongzhe looked innocent. Let him talk and get what I want. Lin Xian was too lazy to deal with such ants. Not even interested in taking action personally. Li Long picked up the suspect and walked to a commercial vehicle. After a while, bursts of miserable howls sounded from inside the car. People from Qiuan are ruthless. Ji Yang smiled and shook his head. Lao Li used to play with spies, agents, and traitors. Zhao Deshan took out his cigarette and blew it out. You must be ruthless against those people. Everyone nodded. Ordinary crimes are most harmful to oneself. I can also tell you something about how bad it is for your family. Treason is different, it means killing the 9 tribes. Even if you don't have a ruthless heart, you can't be a national security police officer. Less than half an hour. Li Long opened the car door, walked out, and stood in front of Lin Xian. Hi, it's him. Joy appeared on everyone's faces. However, he is just a little guy. Li Long frowned, working for a criminal group, a kidnapping. Everyone looked ugly. The biggest fear in investigating a case is extraneous problems. Of course, some cases can be handled separately, but some cases cannot. Li Long continued, as for who he sold it to at that time, Zhou Yongzhe didn't know. He only received 20,000 yuan. A living person was sold for 20,000 yuan? Lin Xian's expression was cold. Has his superior asked about it? Yeah, Li Long nodded. Early in the morning, in a mountainous area, a brick factory. Many brick factories are built near mountains and use nearby soil to bake bricks. At this time, Lin Xian saw something different in this brick factory. It had stopped production long ago and the brick factory was abandoned. It was later contracted by local residents and turned into a poultry farm to raise pheasants. Through Zhou Yongzhe's confession. This poultry farm is not only a breeding farm, but also a Tibetan hideout. Specially used to hide some abducted persons. It was also the place where he traded with his previous family. Lin Xian and Li Long walked along the path to the gate of the breeding farm. Dogs barked in the courtyard. After a while, an old man wearing clothes walked out of a row of bungalows in the courtyard. When the old man came to the door and saw Lin Xian and Li Long, he frowned and asked, "What's wrong with you?" "Police." Li Long took out his police card and said, "Open the door." The old man's expression changed, he hesitated a little, and opened the courtyard door. Lin Xian and Guo Su walked into the courtyard. Sudden. I heard the door locking from behind. The old man actually locked the courtyard door. Lin Xian and Li Long looked at each other and almost laughed. "What do you want to do? You want to kill the police?" At this time, 6 people came out of that row of bungalows. Some had shotguns, others had shovels. Others were armed with sticks and sledgehammers. Looking at that posture, he really wanted to take action against them. But they just surrounded Lin Xian and Li Long. They all looked fierce and did not take action for the time being. Lin Xian looked indifferent and looked at the old man walking towards him, wanting to laugh. "Officer, you don't want to die, do you?" The old man said cheerfully, "Can I ask you a few questions?" "You ask." Lin Xian smiled. "How do you know this place?" The old man stared into Lin Xian's eyes. "Zhou Yongzhe, Lao Ba told us." Lin Xian asked, "What else do you want to ask?" The old man's expression changed and he looked at the people around him. "We can't stay in this place anymore. Get rid of these 2 first, and we'll take the piglets in the cellar away." Hearing the seller and the piglets, Lin Xian and Li Long's expressions changed. Sudden. 5 of the 6 armed men rushed toward them. The other man carrying a shotgun didn't move. It's this moment. Boom. There was a shot in the distance, a sniper rifle. The man holding a shotgun had his head explode. A moment. Including that old man, everyone was stupid. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Kisiung. Chapter 318. Kneel on the ground with your head in your hands. Li Long roared, took out his gun and pointed it at the 3 people in front of him. It also wakes up the others. An unexpected scene appeared. This group of people turned out to be more ferocious than expected. Standing behind Lin Xian and Li Long, a man suddenly swung a sledgehammer. The terrifying hammerhead hit Li Long's head with strong wind. Lin Xian's eyes flashed with blood and he waved his arm. Bang! He firmly grasped the head of the sledgehammer with his palm and made a muffled sound. Everyone was dumbfounded. Can a sledgehammer swung at high speed be caught with bare hands? Lin Xian pulled his arm. He snatched the sledgehammer into his hand and already grabbed the handle of the hammer with his other hand. Arm round. Bang! The sledgehammer struck the man in the chest. Click! The entire hammerhead smashed into the man's chest. The opponent didn't even have time to scream, before he was smashed away with the hammer and turned into a corpse. Lin Xian's arms kept waving. Bang! Another man was hit by a sledgehammer. Died on the spot. When he turned around, he looked at the remaining 3 men. He raised the sledgehammer with one hand and pointed at them, kneel down. Plop! The 3 men, who had looked fierce just now, quickly knelt down. Lin Xian looked at the old man, are you deaf? The old man didn't know whether he was frightened or pretending not to hear. The result, Lin Xian swung his sledgehammer. With a click, the knee on one of the old man's legs was shattered. Ah! Howled miserably. Can you hear me now? Lin Xian asked the screaming old man. But the old man continued to scream without answering. Bang! The sledgehammer hit again, breaking the old man's other leg. Can't you hear it yet? Lin Xian asked with a smile. Yes, I can. The old man roared miserably and shrilly, screaming in despair. Are you cheap? Putting down the sledgehammer, Lin Xian looked at him. Where is the seller? Inside the chicken coop, the old man screamed. Lin Xian looked at the 3 men kneeling on the ground. The 3 of them were so frightened that they nodded quickly. Li Long quickly ran to the chicken coop and investigated a little. A secret door was found on the ground. Open it up and there is a cellar underneath. Without hesitation, I jumped. Lin Xian stood in the courtyard, looking coldly at the screaming old man and 3 men. It's like looking at a few reptiles. Not long time. Guo Su appeared carrying a sniper rifle. Looking at the scene in the yard, he grinned. My little brother is still so cruel and irritable. In fact, he thought wrong. Lin Xian really has no interest in doing anything to ordinary people. It's like humans and ants. How much free time do you have before you step on a few ants for fun? Nowadays, the only thing that can interest Lin Xian is at least some warrior kings and warriors. Otherwise, your hands will be dirty. A few minutes later, Li Long climbed out of the cellar with a ferocious look on his face and full of hostility. Boss, come down and take a look. Lin Xian found that something was not right about this subordinate state. It can be noticed that Li Long exudes violence. They looked at the old man and the 3 men with murderous intent. Look at him, Lin Xian ordered. Guo Su looked straight at Li Long and frowned. What did the colleague discover? Lin Xian came to the chicken coop and looked at the cellar. Jumped in. His legs were on the ground in the cellar. Suddenly I felt a gloomy atmosphere permeating the air. The dim light seemed to swallow up all the light. But Lin Xian heard several heartbeats and breathing sounds. His supervision allowed him to find a passage and walk in. After walking about 4 meters, there is a wooden door. The sound of heartbeat and breathing came from inside the wooden door. Lin Xian frowned and opened the wooden door. Then, he was stunned. He saw a chamber-like room with a light. The air was filled with damp and musty smell. This is not the point. He saw 3 children. The child was seen with a chain around his neck and was completely naked. It was like 3 dogs tied to an iron frame. This is also not the point. There are 2 wooden beds in the secret room. The limbs of 2 naked young women were chained to a wooden bed. The body is in the shape of a big character. Through the marks on their bodies, it was easy to find that they had been humiliated and tortured. And it lasts a long time. Their pupils lost their luster, like 2 dry wells, devoid of life and soul. Those 2 pairs of eyes were more like black holes that had swallowed up all the light and turned into a walking zombie. If you hadn't seen the rise and fall of their chests, you would have thought they were 2 corpses. Lin Xian slowly moved his eyes to look at the 3 children again. Covered with bruises. Some wounds were not only rotten and smelly, but also maggots were seen squirming. Lin Xian took a deep breath and exhaled. Inhale again, exhale again. He was trying his best to suppress the violence and darkness in his heart. But Lin Xian's eyes once again swept across the 2 women and 3 children. Close your eyes and turn around. After a long time, he opened his eyes and walked towards the cellar exit. When Lin Xian jumped out of the cellar, he looked at the old man and the 3 men. Walk over and pick up the sledgehammer. Military trucks and ambulances arrived. A large group of armed police blocked the farm. 2 women and 3 children were carefully carried out of the cellar and sent to the hospital for treatment. 3 bodies and 4 suspects with broken limbs were also carried away. However, the 4 suspects had almost no chance of treatment and could only be amputated. Because all 4 limbs were comminuted fractures. How could Lin Xian let them die? Wouldn't that be too easy for them? At the same time, he had asked what he wanted from the old man. Ji Province, M City. Pingyuan County, Dajhe Town. Lin Xian stood in front of a small building. This small building looked like a villa, and a Mercedes-Benz was parked in the yard. It can be seen that this family is very rich in the local area. Yes, how could they have no money? The family of a kidnapping gang leader was engaged in human trafficking. It would be unreasonable if they had no money. With a bang, the armed police broke open the big iron gate and rushed in. 2 big dogs, Tibetan Mastiffs, rushed into the yard. Tut tut tut. 2 armed police opened fire without any hesitation and killed them on the spot. Other armed police rushed to the small building. 5 minutes. A middle-aged man in pajamas and slippers was dragged out. He pressed in front of Lin Xian as if he was dragging a dog. Slowly squatting down, Lin Xian reached out and grabbed the other person's hair. Lifted the other person's face. Sun Hongbo. Lin Xian looked at the other person and smiled, the leader of the kidnapping gang. The middle-aged man's face was ashen and his body trembled uncontrollably. Don't rush to talk to you about human trafficking. Lin Xian stood up. Let's talk about some fun things first. For example, you sold more than 70 living people to someone, can you remember it? The middle-aged man's body suddenly stiffened, like a stone sculpture. Fear made his breathing become rapid and short. As if he had lost his soul. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Kisiun Zhong. Chapter 319. M City Public Security Bureau, outside the interrogation room. Lin Xian smoked a cigarette and looked at the door of the interrogation room. The leaders of the M City Bureau stood all around. They didn't dare to breathe and stood there honestly. A leader of a kidnapping gang was hiding in M City without being discovered. There is no need to elaborate on how serious the consequences are. Their future fate is also a matter of Lin Xian's words. Lin Xian was in no mood to pay attention to them. The local special police and armed police, led by Guo Su, are conducting a comprehensive arrest. The police forces from other provinces and cities are also cooperating in the arrest work. Strive to destroy the entire kidnapping gang in the shortest time. Li Long is in the interrogation room at this time, interrogating. No matter what means, he must pry open the suspect's mouth. Nearly an hour. The door of the interrogation room opened, and Li Long came with a bloody smell. Ignoring the police around him, he stood in front of Lin Xian. Confess. Inside the interrogation room, Lin Xian looked at the suspect who looked like a man. Who is that person? I really don't know who he is, or what his name is. Sun Hongbo's face was as pale as paper, and he was in a trance. He was about 32 or 33 years old, very gentle, wearing glasses, and gave people the feeling of a teacher. When he saw me, he gave me 100,000 yuan for the first time, saying that he wanted to sell someone, and he knew that I had someone in my hands. He threatened me that if I didn't give it to someone else, he would call the police. He also told me that if I could cooperate well, everyone would give me 50,000 yuan in the future. He also said. Sun Hongbo was almost out of breath. No matter whether he was male or female, old or young, he wanted as many as he could get. Continue, Lin Xian said coldly. I had to listen to him, and I guessed that he couldn't be a policeman, otherwise he would arrest me directly, so why would he give me money? I asked my men to send 2 people to the transaction location, one hand handed over the money and the other hand handed over the people. But he never showed up after the first meeting, and the 2 sides contacted each other through text messages. Every time, he would set a place to hand over the people, leave money in advance, and some medicine. When the people arrived, we gave the pills to those people, and they fell asleep, and we would take the money and leave. I traded many times in a year, dozens of times. Not 77 people, a total of more than 80 people, all traded to him within a year. I really don't know who he is, what he does, and what he wants those people to do, really. Sun Hongbo looked painful and miserable. I only know this much. No lie, Lin Xian waved his hand. Li Long walked out of the interrogation room and led a person. Painter. According to Sun Hongbo's oral statement, the painter began to sketch a portrait of a suspect. Unfortunately, too much time has passed. Who else has such a good memory that he can remember the appearance of a person he only met once 10 years ago? 2 hours later, Lin Xian still got a sketch. Looking at the portrait of a man wearing glasses on it. Everyone returned to F City. Came to the suburbs and went to several places. The places where the suspect Sun Hongbo traded people. Some traces have long been obliterated with the passage of time. Cannot be found. However, there is always a way out. Wang Meng has good news. After investigation, there was indeed a small accident in the crematorium more than 10 years ago. A crematorium master was found stealing corpses by the family of the deceased. Sentenced to 3 years in prison. Then a new crematorium master took over his job. The crematorium master who was sentenced that year was sentenced to an additional 10 years for intentional injury in the detention center, causing severe disability. 2 years after the sentence was reduced. Just released from prison a month ago. F City, a private house. An old man in his 50s was sitting in the dark living room. Drinking wine and eating meat. He laughed from time to time like a psychopath. The corner of his mouth raised an evil arc, which made people shudder. His name is Yang Zhen, 53 years old. He was the cremation workshop master of the crematorium. Before being sentenced, his parents were alive, and he had a wife and a son. Now he has been released after serving his sentence. Both his parents are dead, and his wife and children have run away with someone long ago. Nothing left. Bang, with a sound. The security door slammed on the ground, and a tall figure walked in. In the darkness, he walked towards Yang Zhen, who was stunned. Standing in front of him, looking down at him. Yang Zhen. Lin Xian said in a cold tone, "Excuse me, do you know who put the 77 bodies in the secret room underground in the crematorium?" Yang Zhen came back to his senses. There was no panic, let alone fear. Instead, his face was distorted, his brows were furrowed, and the corners of his mouth were pulled down. Every detail of his expression revealed his evil and ferocious characteristics. He was like a demon crawling out of hell, and people dared not look directly into his eyes. Lin Xian frowned, realizing that the old man in front of him seemed to be a little bit mentally ill. But think about it, someone who can do such a thing must be a little sick in his heart. That's normal. I don't understand what you are saying. Yang Zhen laughed, picked up the wine glass, and continued to drink. Want to drink together? Okay. Lin Xian sat down next to Yang Zhen. It seems that you are also quite lonely. Your parents are gone, and your wife and children have also run away. I actually can't understand why you stole the corpse and why you hurt people in the detention center. Yang Zhen raised the wine glass and paused in the air. His face was full of twisted wrinkles, and his eyes flashed with cruel light. But he didn't say anything. What's even more strange is, Lin Xian looked at the wine and meat on the table. It is said that you often worked night shifts for a period of time, and took the initiative to work night shifts. Some people also saw you often running to the funeral home underground, and often carried out some things. And outside the crematorium, some people found some new soil. Another colleague said that you are a really good person. One day you bought some cement and took the initiative to help repair the crematorium. The leaders said that you treat the crematorium as your home. Some people think you are like a lunatic. A person with a wife and children doesn't like to go home. Is it because your wife and children are warm and comfortable? Isn't it because I don't like the smell of the head that I have to wait at the crematorium every day? Isn't this a disease? By the way, have you ever heard the saying? If you lie once, you will do it countless times, and the same is true for stealing. As long as you have done it for the first time, you will steal countless times. Since you can steal a corpse once, you must have stolen countless times. It's just that you didn't steal the corpse in the crematorium, but other corpses. Lin Xian tilted his head and looked at him coldly. Is that right? Yang Zhen's expression became stiff in an instant, and his eyes revealed fear and anxiety. Suddenly, his face became distorted. The hand holding the chopsticks was raised in the dark. In an instant, it stabbed Lin Xian's throat. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Qixiong. Chapter 320. Why bother? Lin Xian smiled and breathed a sigh of relief. The other party's behavior is no longer self-inflicted. The whole case has now been solved, and the right person has finally been found. Click. Yang Zhen's hand holding the chopsticks was broken. The white bone spurs pierced the skin. Ah! Yang Zhen howled miserably and struggled. Lin Xian waved his palm. Snapped. A big mouth slapped the old man in the face. Blood, water, and teeth spurted out of the mouth. He knocked Yang Zhen down on the sofa. You should know very well that there is something wrong with those corpses, right? Lin Xian looked at Yang Zhen who was lying on the sofa, and your problem is even bigger. Are those corpses mummies made by you? If I'm not mistaken, did someone ask you to destroy those corpses, but you kept them instead? What do you want those corpses for? Is it because of a perverted hobby, or because you want to sell them for money? But whatever it was, it doesn't matter now. Tell me. Lin Xian stretched out his hand and held the old man in front of him, who handed those corpses into your hands. Yang Zhen's eyes were fixed on Lin Xian, and he shivered violently. He felt the breath of death in the young man. At this moment, Lin Xian seemed like a devil in his eyes. I don't know anything. I don't know what you are talking about. Who the hell do you think you are? If you can, just kill me. Yang Zhen roared and struggled. Punch Lin Xian in the face. Click. The old man's second wrist was broken off by Lin Xian. Ouch. A shrill howl came from his mouth, like the howl of a wild animal. It's useless. Lin Xian shook his head. The longer you don't say anything, the more painful it will be for you, the more excited I will be, and I will prepare you so well that you can neither survive nor die. Although it is to scare the other party. But Lin Xian felt that at this moment, he really looked like a perverted villain. Yang Zhen took action. I don't know if he was frightened by Lin Xian's words, or if he couldn't bear the pain. Maybe he also knew that just stealing some corpses would not constitute a capital crime. It's a man wearing glasses. Yang Zhen roared, there is another foreigner, they brought the body here. Foreigners, Lin Xian's expression changed and his pupils shrank. Be bad. Here man with glasses. He knew it was the suspect Sun Hongbo mentioned as the buyer. As for foreigners, there is a very funny law. No matter whether people from the Dragon Kingdom go abroad or foreigners come to the Dragon Kingdom, crime rates are extremely low. Of course, Lin Xian refers to normal foreigners, except black people. He doesn't discriminate. But the black race is indeed the race of color with the highest crime rate in the world. If you are not convinced, come and argue. The foreigner in Yang Zhen's mouth is actually a white man. By confession. This white man feels the same as the man with glasses. They all seemed very knowledgeable. Lin Xian also thought of a possibility. Those who conduct experiments are indeed a group of cultural people. Everyone is very knowledgeable. You have no knowledge, do you want to do an experiment with wool? Through Lu Changjiang's dissection of those mummies, it has been discovered that some kind of human experimentation was being conducted on the dead. Some agents and chemicals that can stimulate adrenaline and other hormones in the body were also found in the body. Is it possible that someone in a certain laboratory personally purchased living humans for experiments? Was it someone from the laboratory who personally found someone to dispose of the body? Back then, it was the man with glasses who came to me and told me that he had a big deal and asked me if I could do it. I will be given 10,000 yuan for helping them dispose of a body, but the body must be cremated cleanly without leaving any traces. I was moved, so I agreed and helped them dispose of the body secretly. The first few times, they watched at the scene, but then they stopped coming. Every time they brought the body, they would leave me 10,000 yuan. Maybe I'm too greedy. Because I have channels to sell corpses, and there are people who specialize in recycling corpses. Each corpse with intact bones can be sold for 15,000. It was also through this channel that I learned how to handle corpses, dehydrate, air dry, and preserve them. So, how could I burn all the money, and then I secretly hid the body in the funeral home, creating a secret room. In less than a year, we got a total of more than 70 corpses, yes, 77 corpses. Mainly because the investigation was too strict at that time and there was no way to get the corpses out. And the quantity is too much, and the other party can't eat it. The other party asked me to wait until I find a big buyer, and then sell the bodies together. But, the bespectacled man and the foreigner suddenly disappeared, and no corpses were delivered. But I didn't care. Anyway, I made money, and those mummies can be sold for money, so I can spend my lifetime. However, it was because of my itchy hands that I was unlucky. One day I found a good corpse, and the family brought it to be cremated. I thought about stealing the corpse and getting some cow bones to fool around with it. I didn't know that a family member who knew medicine noticed something was wrong with the ashes. He also said that the ashes produced by burning human bones are black, gray, and white, while the ashes produced by burning cow bones are only black and gray. Then they broke in, and I didn't have time to hide my body, so it was discovered on the spot. Then I was sent to the detention center and then sentenced. But because the sentence was too short, I stayed in the detention center for more than a year, and finally stayed in the detention center. The reason why I hurt people in the detention center, it wasn't because I wanted to hurt people. I found that a prisoner wanted to kill me. Yes, he wanted to kill me, like crazy, and I just resisted and wanted to live. I just hit him a few times with a wrench, but I didn't know that I would become a vegetable and was sentenced to another 10 years. I swear, it was really him who wanted to kill me, not me who wanted to hurt him on purpose. Yang Zhen screamed in pain, with an angry, aggrieved, and ferocious face. Lin Xian looked at him coldly. Looking at Yang Zhen's pupils, analyzing the expression and heartbeat of the old man in front of him. Finally came to a conclusion that he didn't lie. Because he didn't lie. A more terrible thing happened. Someone wanted to kill Yang Zhen in the detention center? Lin Xian's mind worked and he came to another conclusion. Is someone worried that after Yang Zhen is arrested, he will tell others about the burning of the body? To silence him? But none of this matters anymore. Through Yang Zhen's narration, Lin Xian has discovered two important clues. 1. The white man who transported the body with the man with glasses had a big birthmark on his neck. 2. Every time they transported the body, the vehicle was a white van without a license plate. The clue finally appeared.